Please rewind this cassette.
All right, guys, Uncut Gems. This is the new joint from the Safdie brothers, the guys behind that movie Good Time from a couple years ago. One of my favorite films of the last decade. I've been a fan of some of their other work, but there's no denying Good Time is what put them on the map, although I'd highly recommend some of their films they made before that. They made a couple documentaries. Needless to say, I had a lot of hype for this movie. The reviews have been fantastic, and everything I read about this movie had me excited about it. Now, there's no denying Uncut Gems is another, well, pardon the pun, gem from the filmmaking duo. But to me, this wasn't nearly as good as their previous film, and I don't know if I really buy into the hype with this movie. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but this was not like the non-stop thrill ride that I kept reading over the last few months. It was a good movie, but I really thought I was going to come out and be like, what the fuck, and it just wasn't like that. They had the idea for this movie a decade ago and tried to get Adam Sandler back then. At one point, Jonah Hill was cast as Howard, and then they were able to get Sandler again once Jonah Hill left. Good Time was created more on the fly after they began a relationship with Robert Pattinson. And now that I've seen this, I can't help but feel that they took elements from that movie, from this movie actually, this screenplay, and used it to create Good Time. So in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm seeing the same thing over again, is the guess the way I'd put it. My explanation would be, is they had the idea for Uncut Gems and what kind of movie it was going to be. They couldn't get it made. So when they started to make Good Time, I think they had a lot of those ideas and aesthetic choices and kind of the pace of it, and they did it with that movie. Only this time it's like less fresh, and in many ways it somehow feels smaller. I don't think this has the scope of Good Time. This is a much more like close-knit, smaller world that they've built here. I don't know, it feels like this movie should have happened before Good Time. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed about 85% of this movie. The cinematography is vivid. The sound mixing is actually pretty astonishing. It deserves an Oscar nomination. There's nice writing and directing here. The Safdies know how to pace and structure a movie. But the movie repeats itself a lot. It's rather repetitive. It comes down to a series of events in which Howard keeps making bad decisions, and then he sort of gets out of one bad thing and then gets himself into another bad situation. It's compelling to watch Sandler go down this rabbit hole, but scenes don't have much of a twist to them. Like, one thing I loved about Good Time is how many shocking turns the story took. Halfway into that movie, we get introduced to a new character that becomes just as compelling as our lead character. In this movie, the Safdie's approach is to hide information and certain relationship dynamics from us until the later half of the movie. We also don't get a full sense of some of these people until the movie's really almost over. So it's a different narrative choice. With Good Time, it was, let's set this character up in a situation, and then the situation goes to a place that's surprising, and then it leads to another scenario within the story that's also surprising. This film, on the other hand, you sort of know where it's going to go. You know what Howard's going to do. But what they do in the writing with this film is that you don't know how close he is with certain people. You really don't know what's totally going on. That's the part of it that really works, and that's the part that, although I think I prefer the writing approach of Good Time to this writing approach. I'm just going through some of my notes here. Okay, one standout sequence in this movie, though, involves Howard going to a nightclub to pick up his most prized item. The Weeknd is performing and black lights are used for an involving aesthetic. The song Swimming Pools by Kendrick Lamar is playing. It's a nice touch. Howard's been cheating on his wife with this employee named Julia, who ends up being one of the best things about the movie, the actress and the character. She's also at the club doing drugs with The Weeknd in the bathroom. Howard starts a fight and then gets kicked out, resulting in an argument that shines with much needed humanity. Scenes like this are when the Safdies show their real strength as a storytelling duo. And that's the thing with this, is like, I didn't know that scene was going to go that way. I didn't know he was going to fight with The Weeknd. I didn't know she was going to be at the club like that. So that had a surprising turn to it. And then it fleshed out that relationship between the two of them a little bit more. But that's really the only scene like that. There's a few scenes like that, but for the most part, it's like, all right, I'm gambling on this game. Okay, I owe this guy money. All right, I'm going to go to this place and put more money down. Okay, I have this thing going on. I was entertained the whole time, but it wasn't nearly, I don't know, it wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be, and maybe I just hyped myself up too much. I've heard many critics praise Sandler's performance and say it's mind blowing. I mean, I thought it was really good, but I wasn't shocked that Sandler pulled this off. I've seen him do similar things to this in his comedy films. It's just this film isn't played up for laughs in that way. I'm not sure I buy this being the ultimate transformative performance of the year. I do think other actors could have played this part just as well as Adam Sandler. That's not to knock Adam Sandler, but when you read the reviews, it makes it like, oh, no one else could do this. And it's like, what about John Turturro? And I do think Jonah Hill could have pulled this off too. The characters on the page, in my mind, and some of you may disagree with that, but I think that the characters on the page here, I think it's just a good character for a lot of people to play. And Howard's just very unlikable throughout the movie. So perhaps in some ways, this movie is colder than it needs to be. It's surprisingly funny, though, and towards the end, it becomes incredibly intense. The movie really relies on the overall sense of danger to keep the pace moving. And I know this review's sounding a little bit too negative, so let's go to more of the positive things that I did like about the movie, because I did like this movie, but I'm not in love with it like I thought I was going to be. And that just happens sometimes. Like, what are you gonna do? I love that Eric Bogosian is in this. I've been a fan of him ever since Talk Radio, his monologues. I mean, Eric Bogosian is a treasure to me, and it's great to see him in this. And it reminded me of when Nicholas Winding Refn cast Albert Brooks in his role in Drive. I wanted more of his character, as it always gave the movie a lot more meat. His relationship with Howard is played out really beautifully in the structure of the film, and the best part of the ending is how they twist our expectations of how these two feel about each other. One gets the sense that Bogosian's character is also involved with something that is now out of his control, and you don't really get the feeling of that till the end of the movie, like, oh, this guy might be in over his head too, which also gives it humanity and realism that I really liked. The movie has cosmic imagery, hinting at themes about chaos and how connected our behavior is to the universe. Kevin Garnett plays himself in a very winning performance, in which he becomes obsessed with Howard's new addition to the store. This jewel, this beautiful thing from what is it? I can't remember where it's from, because I saw this like a week ago. But Kevin Garnett starts to believe it'll bring him luck in his future basketball games. And the movie takes place during 2012. So throughout the movie, Howard keeps placing these bets. Even when he has a chance to get himself out of some real trouble, which is several times throughout the movie, he goes for broke and puts everything on the line for a bigger score. I really like the visuals. They're pretty great. This is the same DP who shot Seven. He's very acclaimed. I can't pronounce his name very well. I did prefer the tighter camera work in Good Time. I did like that there was more extreme close-ups and the claustrophobia was more intense with that movie. But this captures a lot of the same energy. It's just like they opened it up a bit more. It felt a little bit more mainstream than that movie. And that might have been intentional. They may have wanted to go bigger. You do feel trapped the deeper you go. And I must admit, I was extremely drunk during this movie, and I wouldn't recommend it. Like, bar hopping's fun, but this movie will give you major anxiety without being fucked up before you go into it. And at some point, I didn't know if it was the movie or if it was me or the 6 shots I had before I went in that was making me feel so off. When I left the theater and found myself in the hallway, I was like lost in this labyrinth of my own design. The city streets were now shaped in the vision of this movie. I stopped at a gas station to get a slice of pizza, and the guys running the store didn't speak English very well, and the whole thing became weirdly complicated. I had a sense that something bad was going to happen and pictured this all being in the world of the movie. I guess the point of this story is that my greatest praise to Uncut Gems is how fresh and kinetic the Safdie's filmmaking style is. They excite me in a way that few modern filmmakers do. I remember being so elated at the end of Good Time, I wanted to watch the movie again right after I was done with it. So when I came out and I saw the city streets, I saw the bars, the people, and everything was kind of like painted in their vision and their world, that let me know that these filmmakers are really leaving an imprint on my mind, and I do connect with it spiritually. I connect with it generationally. I feel like they're very modern filmmakers. Um, But I felt that way about Good Time, and I felt the way about this movie. Coming out of the movie, I did like, okay, I get it. But I was extremely drunk seeing this movie. Originally, we were going to go see the movie and then drink afterwards, but we decided to drink before we saw the movie. And yeah, by the time we got in there, we were just messed up. And this is like a headache-inducing experience. So I don't think it's a bad movie to watch stoned, but I wouldn't recommend watching this one drunk. It's very uncomfortable to sit there for 2 hours. When the movie reaches its end and the final song starts playing over the credits, did start to rethink everything, and things had more texture than I realized during the actual initial viewing. I've actually thought about this movie a lot since I've originally seen it, and I think that that says something about the control the Safdies have over their audience and manipulating them. These guys are major talents with the vision of New York that we haven't seen since the days of early Scorsese or even Sidney Lumet, if you think of like Dog Day Afternoon or Serpico. This is grimy, and their style reminds me of After Hours more than anything. In particular, Good Time reminded me of that. This one reminded me of a few other movies. One that comes to mind is The Gambler with James Caan. And then this movie with Dustin Hoffman that the name is slipping me right now. That's really fun. Where he robs a jewelry store at one point. It has a very similar style to that. I like the soundtrack a lot, and at one point I thought it sounded exactly like the OST for Akira. I was even chuckling a little bit at that. It's like this is the exact same fucking song. It was a nice surprise how this film opened, as it shows the Safdies can pull off different things when they put their minds to it. And I think that um, if they, I don't know, if they keep evolving their style and don't just stick to the things they're good at, they might have a really interesting film in the future. I think I would have enjoyed this more at home, because uncomfortable films like this are always a tricky thing when you're with an audience. I admire how this film embraces cringe, something that played out very well with audiences when Joker came out a few months ago. Because despite the clear influence of the past, there's something very modern about this approach when you think of like the show The Office or something like that. And there was definitely a lot of Robert Altman vibes with this, with the overlapping dialogue. And I've heard the Safdies talk about Robert Altman before. I just love how these guys use long lenses and seem to go out of their way to break convention. These guys really like to break the rules, and I always admire that. If you get a chance to see any interviews or check out the Criterion Closet episode with the Safdies, you will get a sense of how focused and educated these indie darlings are. Their movie has a nice way of starting out chaotic, then gaining more focus as all the pieces come together in the third act. It never feels long despite its 135-minute running time, and the work from the supporting cast goes a long way in helping to flesh this world out. Howard's world does feel incredibly small, lonely, only giving you glimpses of hope. This movie's theme has clarity, but the overall rawness makes it feel a little hammered in. I don't know if there's much depth here. It's like the thesis just keeps being overstated. You know, they make their point over and over and over again, and I don't know if there's much more to it than that. It's still a lot of fun and certainly one of the best films of the year. Let me say that this is one of the 10 best movies I've seen this year. I could see people having problems with the ending, and it takes a while for the story to really pick up and get going. I think like the first half hour, it doesn't drag from a pacing standpoint, but it's a lot of setup before you really get into the meat of the movie. I'm not saying it needed to be a shorter film because it was long. I'm just saying that there was maybe a structural issue. They could have picked the pace up a little quicker at the beginning. You know, Good Time just starts immediately with that robbery sequence, and you're on the chase. You're ready to go. It doesn't stop after that. This movie isn't that way. It's not like it starts crazy kinetic and then doesn't let up. It builds up to that sort of energy with the payoff, which is once again why I think they had a lot of inspiration of this when they went into Good Time. I think they used a lot of these ideas. But I'm still going to give this an 8 out of 10, maybe an 8.5 out of 10. I'm feeling more comfortable with the 8 out of 10 right now, at least on this first viewing. The movie is brimming with authenticity, and Sandler's performance does lack vanity, which is something I always love to see from a mainstream actor like that. The guy's showing his gut. He doesn't look good here. So that's a nice thing. This is a very raw performance, and there is so much realism with the Safdie brothers. There's layers of reality coming through all this world that they've created, and it is like a testament to the crooks and the thieves and everyone out there that's tried to con their way out of something. It's sort of a love letter to those people, if you will. See, because all of us are looking for more out of life, convincing ourselves that the next big score is just around the corner. A brutal scene taking place during an auction really shows you the way that life can just keep knocking you down, making you feel pathetic. But a later scene, built around a high stakes basketball game, shows you that it is possible to be in control of one's destiny, even if just for a little while, as there's a cost for the road one takes to get there, coming out the other end, face to face with the gem you've been chasing. Nobody gets out of this uncut, and everyone, all of us, has some Howard Ratner in them.